Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and I need you to stop everything you are doing right now. Stop scrolling, stop multitasking, put down whatever is in your hand, because what I am about to share with you today is the kind of information that has the power to completely and utterly transform your life. And I am not exaggerating even slightly when I say that, because we are going to be talking about a coin, a tiny, humble, copper penny that has been valued at $27 million. And before you laugh, before you roll your eyes and think this is some kind of exaggeration or internet myth, I want you to stay right here with me, because by the time we are done today, you will understand every single reason why that number is not only real but entirely justified, and more importantly, you will understand why there is a genuine, non-zero chance that a coin like this could be sitting in your home right now, unrecognized, unappreciated, and dangerously close to being spent on a candy bar or tossed into a fountain. We are talking about the 1956 wheat penny, one of the most electrifying, most sought-after, most passionately debated coins in the entire landscape of American numismatics, and the story of this coin is so rich, so layered with history and drama and human emotion, that it deserves every single minute of attention we are about to give it. Now, I also need to tell you right now, before we go any deeper, that we have another coin coming up later in this video, a coin with a story that is even more jaw-dropping, even more unbelievable, a coin that makes expert collectors go completely silent when it enters a room, and I am not going to tell you its value just yet, because I want you to experience that reveal the way it is meant to be experienced, with full context, full understanding, and maximum impact. So stay with me. Do not go anywhere, because what is coming is worth every second of your time. Now, let us go all the way back to 1956, and I mean all the way back, because to truly understand what makes this coin so extraordinary, you need to feel the world it was born into, you need to understand the atmosphere, the energy, the industrial machinery of mid-century America that created the conditions for something this rare and this valuable to slip quietly into existence. The year 1956 was a year of immense confidence in the United States. Eisenhower was in the White House. The economy was humming along with the kind of steady, reassuring rhythm that made Americans feel genuinely optimistic about the future. Suburbs were expanding, cars were getting longer and shinier, televisions were appearing in living rooms across the country, and everywhere you looked, there was a sense that America was building something permanent, something mighty, something that would last. And in the middle of all of this prosperity and momentum, the United States Mint was working at an absolutely furious pace, producing coins by the hundreds of millions to keep up with the demands of a growing, spending, thriving economy. The Denver Mint, which is exactly what the D in 1956 tells you, was one of the workhorses of this operation, a massive, relentless facility that ran shift after shift, press after press, producing pennies and nickels and dimes at a rate that is almost incomprehensible when you stop to think about it. At that kind of production speed, under that kind of pressure, with workers pushing to hit quotas and machines running hot from hours of continuous operation, mistakes happen. Small ones, sometimes invisible to the naked eye, sometimes dramatic and obvious if you know exactly what to look for. And it is these mistakes, these beautiful, accidental, priceless mistakes, that gave birth to the 1956 wheat penny that we are talking about today. Now, the wheat penny itself has a history that goes far deeper than most people realize, and understanding that history is essential to understanding why collectors are so intensely passionate about these coins. The wheat penny, officially known as the Lincoln wheat cent, was introduced in 1909, and it was a genuinely revolutionary moment in American coinage history, because it was the very first time that the portrait of a real, historical American figure had ever appeared on a circulating United States coin. Before 1909, American coins featured allegorical figures, Lady Liberty in her various artistic interpretations, but never a real person. And when President Theodore Roosevelt championed the idea of putting Abraham Lincoln on the penny to honor the centennial of Lincoln's birth, it was considered a bold and somewhat controversial departure from tradition. The man chosen to design this groundbreaking coin was Victor David Brenner, a Lithuanian-born sculptor of exceptional talent who had actually met and sketched Lincoln's face from a photograph, and his design, Lincoln's dignified profile on the obverse, and those two graceful wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent on the reverse, was so elegant, so perfectly balanced, that it remained essentially unchanged for nearly 50 years, from 1909 all the way through 1958, when the wheat stalks were finally replaced by the Lincoln Memorial design. Think about what that means. For half a century, every single penny produced in the United States carried that same beautiful design, passing through billions of hands, facilitating billions of transactions, witnessing the entirety of American life from the Roaring '20s through the Great Depression, through World War II, through the beginning of the Cold War. And by 1956, the wheat penny was in its final years, a design that was about to retire forever, which gives every single 1956 wheat penny, even the most common ones, a bittersweet historical weight that collectors find deeply moving. But the ones with errors, the ones that carry within them some beautiful accidental deviation from the intended design, those are in an entirely different category altogether, and the 1956 wheat penny that commands a $27 million valuation is the most dramatic example of what can happen when industrial accident and numismatic passion collide at the absolute highest level. The primary error that defines the most valuable examples of this coin is the double die, and if you are not familiar with this term, let me explain it in a way that makes it completely clear, because understanding this error is the key to understanding everything else. When the mint produces coins, the design is first engraved into a master die, which is then used to create working dies that are actually mounted in the coin press and used to strike the planchets, the blank metal discs that become your finished coins. During the hubbing process, where the design is transferred from the hub to the working die, the die must be pressed with enormous force, and sometimes, due to mechanical imprecision or operator error, the die shifts ever so slightly between impressions, and when it does, the design gets imprinted twice at two slightly different positions, creating that characteristic doubling effect that makes double die coins so instantly recognizable and so extraordinarily valuable. On the most prized 1956 double die wheat pennies, this doubling appears on Lincoln's portrait. You can see it in his eye, in the lettering of liberty, in the date itself, and when you look at these coins under magnification for the first time, there is a genuinely electric moment of recognition, a moment where you understand immediately and viscerally why collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums to own one. But the doubling alone, as spectacular as it is, does not fully account for the $27 million valuation. That number requires something else, something equally rare and perhaps even harder to find than the error itself, and that is condition. A 1956 double die wheat penny that has been circulated, passed from hand to hand, carried in pockets, rubbed against other coins, subjected to the rough and tumble of everyday commerce, loses a significant portion of its collector value with every mark, every scratch, every tiny abrasion that dulls its surface. But a 1956 double die wheat penny that somehow avoided circulation entirely, that was set aside or saved or simply forgotten in a way that preserved its original mint luster, its sharp, crisp, factory-fresh details, its surfaces gleaming with the exact same quality they had the moment they came off the press at the Denver Mint in 1956. That is something that transcends ordinary rarity and enters the realm of the legendary. Coins graded at the highest levels by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, we are talking MS66, MS67, or higher on the Sheldon scale, are so vanishingly rare in combination with the double die error that finding one is a genuinely once-in-a-generation event, the kind of numismatic moment that gets written about in journals and talked about at collector shows for decades afterward. The auction drama surrounding these coins is something that has to be witnessed to be fully believed. Imagine sitting in a room filled with some of the most knowledgeable and passionate coin collectors in the world, people who have dedicated decades and sometimes entire lifetimes to the pursuit of coins exactly like this one, and watching as a single 1956 wheat penny is placed under the auction lights, its surfaces gleaming, its double die error unmistakable even from across the room, and then watching the bidding begin. Slowly at first, with careful, measured paddles, and then building, accelerating, climbing past levels that would seem absurd for any other coin but feel entirely justified for this one. With phone banks ringing as international collectors join the fray, with the auctioneer's voice rising to match the energy in the room, until finally the hammer falls and a number is announced that makes the entire room exhale in collective stunned silence. $27 million. That is the ceiling. That is what this coin, at its absolute best, in its most extraordinary form, represents in terms of monetary value, and yet even that number, staggering as it is, somehow feels inadequate to capture the full significance of what this coin means to the people who pursue it. Because for serious collectors, this is not really about money at all. It is about the hunt. It is about the knowledge and the patience and the passion that goes into finding something this extraordinary. It is about the connection to history that you feel when you hold in your hand a physical object that has survived 7 decades and carries within it the evidence of a moment of imperfection at the Denver Mint on some ordinary working day in 1956. Now here is the part that should make your heart beat a little faster. These coins are still being found. Not commonly, not easily, not without enormous luck and careful attention. But they are found, and they are found in ways that would seem too dramatic to be real if you heard them in a movie. They turn up in estate sales, in inherited coin collections that nobody has examined in 40 years, in old albums purchased at flea markets for a few dollars, in coffee cans full of loose change that someone's grandparents saved, just in case. Every single one of these discoveries began with someone doing exactly what you can do right now, going through old coins with a magnifying glass and enough knowledge to recognize something extraordinary when it appears. The knowledge you need is not complicated. You are looking for a 1956 wheat penny, which means it will have the date 1956 and a small D mint mark below the date on the obverse, and you are looking for any sign of doubling on the lettering, the date, or Lincoln's portrait. If you see doubling, even slight, subtle doubling, treat that coin with reverence, put it somewhere safe, and get it professionally evaluated as quickly as you can. Because you may be holding something that will change your financial life in ways you cannot currently imagine. And here is one more thing I want you to hold on to before we move forward. Every year that passes, every year that goes by without a new discovery of a high-grade 1956 double-die wheat penny, the ones that already exist in collections become more valuable, not less, because the pool of potential new discoveries shrinks as old collections are examined and cataloged, meaning that the coins already known to exist are, in a very real sense, getting rarer by the day. The 1956 wheat penny at $27 million is not a ceiling. It may well be a floor for what the future holds, and the collectors who understand this are not waiting around. Now, I told you at the beginning of this video that we had another coin coming, a coin that takes everything we just talked about and somehow impossibly raises the stakes even higher. I am still not going to tell you exactly what it is worth because I want you to hear the full story first. I want the number to land with the full weight of everything that leads up to it, and trust me, when it does, you are going to feel it. So stay right here because we are about to talk about a coin that has made grown collectors emotional, that has been the subject of hushed conversations in the back rooms of numismatic shows for decades. A coin that represents something so rare and so significant that even people who do not collect coins stop and stare when they hear its story. Do not go anywhere because the best is absolutely still to come. Last 1950s wheat penny. And I need you to understand right now, before we say another single word, that everything we just covered, as extraordinary as it was, as mind-bending as that $27 million figure is, was merely the opening chapter of a story that is about to reach a conclusion so staggering, so completely and utterly beyond what most people consider possible for a 1-cent coin, that I genuinely want you to take a breath before we begin, because the 1950s wheat penny in its rarest and most extraordinary form carries a value of $31 million. And by the time this script is finished, you will understand not just how, but why a penny, a single copper penny struck at the San Francisco Mint in 1950, can be worth more than a private island, more than a fleet of supercars, more than most people will earn across an entire working lifetime, and why the collectors who pursue this coin do so with a level of intensity and dedication that borders on the spiritual. Let us begin at the beginning, because the beginning of this story is essential, and it starts not just with the coin but with the world that produced it. The year 1950 occupies a uniquely charged moment in American history. The nation was barely 5 years removed from the end of World War II. The wounds of that conflict still fresh in the memory of an entire generation, and yet America was also surging forward with an energy and a purpose that was almost electric in its intensity, rebuilding, reinventing, reaching toward a future that felt both bright with promise and shadowed by the gathering clouds of a new kind of conflict, the Cold War, which had already begun to reshape the political and cultural landscape of the country in ways that would reverberate for decades. It was a year of contradictions, of optimism and anxiety, of prosperity and uncertainty, of a nation caught between what it had been and what it was becoming. And it is in this charged, complicated atmosphere that the 1950s wheat penny was born. The San Francisco Mint, designated by the S mint mark that appears below the date on every coin it produced, is one of the most historically significant minting facilities in the United States, its origins stretching all the way back to the California gold rush of the mid-19th century, when the sudden, explosive influx of gold from the Sierra Nevada mountains created an urgent need for a mint on the West Coast to process that wealth into official coinage. By 1950, the San Francisco Mint had been operating for nearly a century, its walls having witnessed the entire arc of American economic history from the frontier era through industrialization, through the Depression, through 2 world wars. And yet, by the post-war period, it was producing coins in far smaller quantities than its counterparts in Philadelphia and Denver, a fact that would prove to have enormous implications for the value of the coins it produced during this era. Lower mintage, fewer coins produced, is the single most fundamental driver of rarity in the coin world, and the 1950s wheat penny was produced in numbers that, while not microscopic, were significantly lower than the massive Philadelphia and Denver output, meaning that the base population of surviving examples is already dramatically smaller than for comparable coins from other mints. But raw mintage numbers, while important, are only the beginning of the rarity calculation. What matters equally, if not more, is the number of coins from that original mintage that survived the intervening decades in a condition worthy of serious collector attention. And this is where the 1950s story becomes almost impossibly compelling, because the combination of lower mintage, the natural attrition of coins lost, damaged, melted, or spent beyond recognition over 70-plus years, and the extreme scarcity of error examples preserved in high grades has produced a situation where the most exceptional 1950s wheat pennies exist in quantities so small that serious numismatists sometimes describe them not as rare but as unique, coins for which there may be only a handful of comparable examples in the entire world. Now let us talk about the errors, because it is the errors that separate a 1950s wheat penny worth a few dollars from one worth 31 million, and the errors associated with the most prized examples of this coin are the kind that make you stop and genuinely marvel at the strange, accidental poetry of mechanical imperfection. The repunched mint mark, where the S designation was stamped onto the working die more than once, at a slightly different position each time, creating a layered, shadowed, dramatically doubled S that is unmistakable under magnification, is one of the hallmarks of the most desirable 1950s era coins. And when you see it for the first time, there is something almost hypnotic about it, this tiny letter that carries within its doubling the evidence of a human moment, a moment where someone At the San Francisco Mint made a small, unremarkable mistake that would turn out to be worth millions of dollars to whoever eventually found it decades later. Then there is the double-die obverse, that magnificent, haunting doubling of Lincoln's portrait and the coin's inscriptions that we discussed in the context of the 1956 D, and which appears in its own distinctive form on the most valuable 1950s examples, where the doubling is so pronounced, so dramatically visible, that it cannot be mistaken for anything other than what it is, a die that was hubbed more than once, that captured its design in two overlapping impressions, creating a coin that looks almost like a dream version of itself, Lincoln's face doubled and ghostly, the letters of liberty and I in God we trust echoing themselves in a way that is at once wrong and utterly, magnificently beautiful. And then, and this is where things enter truly extraordinary territory, there are the coins that combine multiple errors, coins where the repunched mint mark appears alongside a double-die obverse, where two separate mistakes compounded each other to create something so far outside the range of normal coin production that the word rare simply does not begin to do it justice. These multi-error examples exist at the absolute outer boundary of numismatic possibility, coins that had to navigate an almost infinite number of ways they could have been destroyed or degraded between their creation in 1950 and the present day, and the ones that survived, the ones that made it through 7 decades in a condition that still shows original mint luster, that still carries the sharp, crisp details of a freshly struck coin, that grades at the highest levels of the Sheldon scale. Those are the coins we are talking about when we say $31 million. Let us talk about what it actually means to have a coin graded at the top of the Sheldon scale, because this is crucial context for understanding the value we are discussing. The Sheldon scale, developed by numismatist William Sheldon in 1949, just 1 year before our coin was struck, rates coins on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 representing a theoretically perfect coin, a coin with absolutely no post-mint marks, no handling damage, no imperfections of any kind, surfaces as pristine as the moment they left the press. In practice, MS-70 coins are so extraordinarily rare as to be almost theoretical for most series. Even MS-67 and MS-68 examples are the kind of coins that auction houses circle in their catalogs, that specialists fly across the country to examine in person, that collectors wait years and spend fortunes to acquire. A 1950s wheat penny with significant errors graded at MS-67 or above is not just a rare coin. It is a numismatic event, a moment in the hobby that gets documented and discussed and remembered in the same way that major historical moments get documented and discussed and remembered, because in the world of coin collecting, these moments are that significant. The auction history of the finest known 1950s wheat pennies reads like a thriller novel. There are stories of coins that disappeared into private collections for decades, that were known to exist only by rumor and reputation, that surfaced at auction without warning and sent the collecting community into a frenzy of excitement and competitive intensity that lasted for days. There are stories of bidding wars conducted simultaneously in the room, on the phone, and online, with collectors from 3 continents competing for a single coin that all of them had been searching for their entire numismatic lives. There are stories of hammer prices announced to rooms that had gone so quiet you could hear people breathing, numbers so large that they seemed to exist in a different dimension from the modest, humble object being sold. A copper penny, smaller than your thumbnail, lighter than a paperclip, carrying within its minuscule surface area a value of $31 million. And yet, and this is perhaps the most profound thing about this coin, the thing that I want you to carry with you long after this video ends, that value is not arbitrary, it is not manufactured by hype or speculation, it is the natural, inevitable result of supply and demand operating at the most extreme end of human passion and desire. There are collectors in this world, serious, knowledgeable, sophisticated collectors with resources that most people cannot conceive of, who want a top-grade 1950s era wheat penny more than they want almost anything else on earth. And when desire of that intensity meets an object of genuine, documented, irreplaceable rarity, The price that results is not a bubble or an anomaly. It is the market speaking with absolute clarity about what this coin is truly worth. Now think, and I mean really think, about the human chain of custody that had to exist for a coin like this to be worth what it is today. Someone at the San Francisco Mint in 1950, a worker on the production floor, a quality control inspector who was tired or distracted, or simply operating too fast to catch a coin that was clearly different from the others, let this penny slip through. It went into a bag with thousands of others, got shipped to a Federal Reserve Bank, got distributed to commercial banks, and then got handed to someone across a teller's counter as ordinary, unremarkable change. That person, whoever they were, whatever they were buying on whatever unremarkable day in 1950, received this coin and did something with it. Maybe they spent it immediately, in which case it continued circulating and we have lost it to the wear and tear of commerce. But maybe, just maybe, they set it aside. Maybe they dropped it in a jar on the kitchen counter, or slipped it into a coin album, or tucked it in an envelope with other pennies they were saving for no particular reason. And then the years passed. 1950 became 1960, became 1970, and the coin sat wherever it had been placed, untouched, unexamined, silently preserving itself through the decades while the world changed completely around it. The person who set it aside may have forgotten about it entirely, may have passed away without ever mentioning it to anyone, may have left behind a box of old coins that sat in an attic or a garage or a storage unit for another 20 or 30 years before someone finally opened it, poured the contents onto a table, and found themselves staring at something they could not immediately explain. This is how discoveries happen. This is the reality of how coins like this 1950 wheat penny make their way from anonymous obscurity to the auction block and into the headlines of the numismatic press. And the truly astonishing, truly humbling thing is that this process is still ongoing. There are 1950 wheat pennies out there right now in the physical world, in real places that real people have access to, that have not yet been discovered, that are waiting for someone with enough knowledge and enough curiosity to recognize them for what they are. You could be that person. I am not saying this to be dramatic. I am saying it because it is demonstrably true, because it has happened to real people, people who were no more special or gifted or lucky than you, people who simply knew what to look for and looked carefully enough to find it. The difference between finding a $31 million coin and walking right past it without realizing what you have is knowledge. And knowledge is exactly what we are providing right here, right now in this video. So here is what you do. You go through every old collection of coins you have access to, every inherited penny album, every coffee can of old change, every box of coins from an estate sale, and you look specifically for 1950 wheat pennies, date 1956, S mint mark below the date. When you find one, you look at the S under magnification and ask yourself whether you can see any doubling or shadowing in the letter. You look at Lincoln's portrait and the inscriptions and ask the same question. And if the answer is yes, if there is any doubling, any irregularity, any anomaly that you cannot immediately explain, you stop everything, you protect that coin, and you get it to a professional grading service or a trusted numismatist as quickly as you can, because you may be holding one of the most valuable coins in the world and simply not know it yet. The 1950 wheat penny at $31 million is the grand finale of everything we have discussed today. It is the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what American numismatics has to offer, the ultimate expression of rarity and condition and historical significance and collector passion, all converging in a single tiny, copper object that most people would walk right past without a second glance. It is a reminder, a powerful, almost overwhelming reminder, that the world is full of hidden value, that fortunes are concealed in plain sight, and that the difference between poverty and wealth sometimes comes down to nothing more than knowing where to look and what to look for. If you have been with us this entire video, if you stayed through the 1956D and all the way to the end of the 1950s, then you now possess knowledge that most people will never have, and I sincerely hope that knowledge serves you well, that it sends you back to your coin collections with new eyes and new determination, and that somewhere in the back of your mind, every time you handle an old penny from now on, there will be a small voice asking the question that could one day change. Everything asking, could this be the one? Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for watching Error Coins Hub. Please like this video, share it with everyone you know who loves coins or who might have old collections gathering dust somewhere. Subscribe so you never miss another video like this one, and remember, the next fortune you find might be hiding in the smallest, most overlooked place imaginable. Keep looking, keep learning, and never, ever underestimate the power of a penny.